Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today on the first of a series of masterclasses that the Admiral at the Lake will be um, putting on. And, these masterclasses are really designed to help inform you and help you navigate your future and your future needs. My name is Dan Churchill. I'm the CFO here at the Admiral of the Lake. And before we kind of dive into the presentations, just a couple of housekeeping items. The first is there will be some time for some questions and answers at the end of the presentations. And so if you have a question throughout the presentation, feel free to click on the Q&A button on your Zoom screen and enter in a question there. I'll be monitoring those questions as we move through this presentation today, and we'll get to those at the end. We will wrap up by about 11:30. And so if for some reason we don't get to your question or you have lingering questions afterwards, please reach out to us and we can help get those questions answered. Okay? So today is the first of a series of masterclasses, like I mentioned. And today the focus will be on experts in the senior living industry. Um, I will be focusing on life care and the financial savings of a life care community. We have invited Luis from Northern Trust, who is here with us today. He's going to be providing some information about investments and the 12-month outlook. And we have also invited with us today Steve from Ziegler. Ziegler is an investment banking firm here in headquartered here in Chicago and really a leader in the senior living industry. And he's going to be providing some information about the strength of senior retirement communities both today and tomorrow. Well, I first wanted to show this. This is such a beautiful view from the Admiral at the Lake. And I would mention to you that I'm actually in the 28th floor of the Admiral in an apartment looking out with basically the same view. Um, and so the light in here is just wonderful. It's making me feel really good and happy about this presentation today. So I did want to share just what a beautiful view I have right now. As I mentioned, my name is Dan Churchill. I am a CPA. I'm also the CFO here at the Admiral. I've been in the industry for over 12 years now. I actually started in public accounting, and I was an auditor, and I would go around auditing different organizations just like the Admiral at the Lake. Um, there's usually one question I get almost all the time when I am introduced to someone or I introduce myself to someone, and that is because my last name is Churchill, am I related to Winston? The answer is we are not directly related, but we do have common ancestors. So I sort of think of him as my quasi relative, and I'm very proud of that. um, Speaking of Winston Churchill, one of my favorite quotes of his is that if you have a point to make, don't be subtle or clever, use a pile driver. And then he goes on to say, and pound it in and pound it in. And the reason I like that quote so much is, as it relates to this presentation, I'm a CFO. Luis is in the financial industry. Steve is also in the financial industry. And, the three of us are not salespeople. And so we're not here to sell you on the Admiral at the Lake. What we're really here to do is to provide you that some information that you can use going forward as you look towards your future and your future needs, um, and provide sort of a framework under which you can make decisions about the future of yourself and your needs. So hopefully that makes sense. And so what I thought I would do is jump right in and just give you sort of a brief overview of the Admiral at the Lake. The Admiral is a life care, life plan community. We are a nonprofit organization. We are currently 93% occupied. We have 196 independent living resident apartments. And we also have healthcare as part of our organization. We have 39 assisted living apartments, 17 memory support, 36 private skilled nursing suites, as well as Medicare certified short term rehabilitation. So, the first question that we wanted to tackle today is what is life care? Um, life care community is a community under which um, we have independent living, but we also provide those higher level of care communities like assisted living, memory support, and skilled nursing. And this continuum of care under one organization is really the only financial structure that provides these residential services, including long term care, by way of a predictable monthly fee. And that's really key to know. What's also important to know is that a life care community is really not intended to be a low cost alternative to just staying at home and then at some point in the future moving into one of those skilled nursing communities or assisted living facilities. But given the financial structure here at the Emerald Lake, you actually can save some money in your long term care costs. So, what's required to move into a life plan community is an upfront fee, and that upfront fee is called an entrance fee. And what that does is it gives you the right to occupy an apartment here at a life plan community like the Admiral. That entrance fee can be 90% refunded to your estate when the contract is terminated. There are ongoing monthly fees. And then again, the future costs for healthcare or your long term care needs with assisted living, memory support, and skilled nursing come at discounted costs, which are also predictable. So you might be thinking to yourself, why do I want life care? We'll get into a little bit more detail soon, but just a snapshot is that life care really provides a plan for life, given the discounted long-term care costs and the location of the healthcare costs. It provides both financial and logistical security. As a life care person, life care resident within a life plan community, you get priority access to assisted living, memory support, and skilled nursing. So it's not as if you're staying at home and you need assisted living, so you need to move to a facility somewhere and you just hope that they have a space in the place that you want to live. So at the Admiral, it's different. Here, you get priority access to those higher levels of care. And you also know the people already who are providing that care, which is also great. It provides peace of mind. I think I hear all the time from our residents here that the reason they move to the Admiral or a life plan community is because they know that they will be taken care of for the rest of their life. And then again, that predictability of your future costs is also a very large reason why someone might consider life care. I do get a common question all the time, and that is why on earth would I pay an entrance fee and a monthly fee when I can just stay at home for free? Well, we know that's not totally true. We know that staying at home comes with a cost. Those costs could be anywhere from real estate taxes to HOA fees to just regular maintenance, upkeep, repairs, so on and so forth. So let's tackle this question and discover the savings that you can get with a life plan community. I do have to provide you with a disclaimer though, And that is that everyone on this presentation is at a different age, different health conditions, so on and so forth. So the information that I'm providing today is really a broad stroke average. So it's the average um, resident who would move into the Admiral of the Lake with an average health condition. So we know that this may not fit your specific scenario exactly. So really, this is to illustrate a point, and it may not reflect your specific outcome. But generally speaking, this is what you can expect. So let's take a look at what your financial position would be if you did not move to a life care community that offers life care. So this was an instance where you're staying at home and you are living in your own home, and at a future date, you're going to require the need to move to assisted living, memory support, and or skilled nursing facilities. So the assumption that we make in looking at this is that all the income that you bring in could include your retirement income, pensions, IRA distribution, Social Security. We're assuming that all that money that you earn is also paid out. So all your income and expenses are exactly equal. So we're not assuming that you save any money throughout the rest of the time. And so what that means is we're really just focusing in on the cost of long-term care. So if you stay at home and at a future date move into one of those facilities, for one person, that cost is about $525,000. Then if it's a two-person household or a couple, you would just double that number and that total would be $1,050,000. So what that means is because your income and expenses are exactly equal, then you will have to come up with this money to pay for your long-term care needs. And that will likely come from, liquidation of your assets to help pay for that. That includes investments and the proceeds of the sale of your home in order to pay for that long-term care. So using Lifecare at the Admiral of the Lake, we want to assume the same, that all the income you bring in is exactly what you spend every month. And at the Admiral of the Lake, because of our financial structure and the costs for residents, the cost of long-term care at the Admiral for one person is about $426,000. And then the cost for two people is not double like it is if you were to stay at home. The cost for two people would amount to just over $600,000. So what that means is because your income and your expenses are equal, you would have to pay your long-term care costs by liquidating your assets, which includes investments, and using the proceeds of the sale of your home. So you can really see the savings here with one person savings with life care over your lifetime could be about $100,000, and savings with two people over your lifetime could be about $432,000 under life care. So I mentioned earlier that we're here to provide a framework under which you can use to make decisions. And this is a slide that you can use as a framework for yourself. So if you are one person, I would like you to do this sort of like as your homework, as you are looking at communities. You take the value of your investments, add the sale price of your home, subtract out the long-term care costs of $525,000 because this is the calculation for someone without life care. So this person is staying at home, and in the future, when they need to move to one of those assisted living facilities, this is what it costs. Then you would do the calculation with life care. And with life care at the Admiral, you would do the same calculation for the most part, with the exception of including the entrance fee payment that you would make up front. And then you would also add back 90% of that entrance fee because that gets refunded to your estate. And then compare the two calculations. The same would be true for two people. The difference here is that with two people, without life care, your long-term care costs will be $1,050,000, while at the Admiral, it would be just over $600,000. So you would do the same calculation, but just enter the different long-term care costs, both without life care and with life care. Again, I just wanted to mention these slides can be made available to you. So if you want to get them afterwards so you can see this framework again, just let us know. And then I just wanted to wrap up by saying that I know that money is not the only consideration when you are thinking about your future long-term care needs. And I think of all these other things as sort of risk management. So how are you going to be able to mitigate the risk going forward? Will you be able to maintain your house and get the money that you want when you sell it? Right now, you know what that house is worth, but will it be worth that amount in the future? What should happen if you have an extended illness? Will someone be around to care for you, or will you even have the capacity to find the proper care that you need? Will you be able to make your investments last? Does your long-term care insurance policy, if you have one, cover what you need? Will you have issues getting to your doctor? Here at the Admiral, we offer transportation services. Difficulty in visiting a spouse who is in healthcare. Here at the Admiral, it's just an elevator ride, basically, to see your spouse. Lack of friends or social isolation. And honestly, I can't stress this one enough. We all know that social isolation is a big factor in a person's health condition. And so living in a community like the Admiral, one that offers life care, provides lots of social interaction opportunities. What happens if you have lots of repair costs on your home or a big issue? Will you be able to manage that? Will you be able to find people to help you with your care? And then what happens if you run out of money, and who can make decisions on your behalf? Here at the Admiral, under Life Care, if you run out of money through no fault of your own, then we still have an obligation to you to provide you with a place to live and the care that you need, even though you have run out of money. And we also have a team of people around here who can help make those decisions for your care in the future. So I know that was quick, but I did want to move on to Luis. Luis is a portfolio manager at Northern Trust. He is actually the advisor that we use here at the Admiral and have been really happy with him and his advice. Luis supports nonprofit and institutional clients and develops really customized investment options for his clients. So Luis, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Just a quick sound check. Can you hear me just fine?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So thank you for having me, everyone. So what I thought I would do for today is provide a market outlook based on what we are currently seeing in the market and the environment that we are in. But before we actually touch on that, I think it's very important to briefly talk about what's happened in the first 6 months of the current year. And on this slide, what we have here, we have the global equity markets performance for the first 6 months or the first half of 2020. In the dark green line, we have US equities. In the light green line, we have World X US. And in the blue line, we have emerging markets. But I don't want us to focus specifically on any given line, but more in the direction or the marginal changes of the line. That's where the story really is. And if we all recall, we entered 2020 chugging away. We were forecasting a growth environment for 2020 with durable growth that would endure for the rest of the year. But then something very unique happened. In early January, coronavirus or COVID-19 entered the picture. Originally, it was mainly concentrated in China. But then in February, cases started appearing and spreading outside of China. And that's where the market became really, really uncertain about the future. So what I've highlighted here in the purple box is when the market peaked. The market peaked on February 19th, and it sold off 34% from February 19th to March 23rd over a 4-week period. This is something that's unheard of. So why did the market sell off? The market sold off because the economy essentially shut down overnight. Government officials and public health officials abruptly stopped the economy and were encouraging individuals to stay at home, if not forcing individuals to stay at home. If you all remember, this gave us almost no time to react to what was happening, just given the magnitude of the virus and the spread. But something else unique happened during the first half of the year. We saw that the market troughed or sold off completely on March 23rd. But from that point to the end of June, the market has actually rallied 38%. So we're not at the same levels where we were at the beginning of the year or when the market hit the all-time high on February 19th, but we've definitely made up some ground. The reasoning for this is global central banks and global governments across the world are providing a backstop and stimulating their economies to ensure that the financial markets and the global economy doesn't fall further. We also believe that investors are overly optimistic about the recovery. Something to keep in mind is the virus hasn't gone anywhere. If anything, cases or the virus is spreading steadily across the country and outside of the world. In fact, just early this week, I think California took a couple steps back in terms of their reopening. So this really informs how the market, at least in our opinion, how the market will perform over the next 12 months. And if I were to categorize 2020 using one word, I would say unprecedented. It's kind of an inside industry joke, but I think that truly explains what we've seen so far. But flipping over to the following page, I think that the natural question now is, given that historical context, what's the path forward? And how is the market likely to perform over the next 12 months? And we think at Northern Trust that the 3 bullet points here will likely inform how the global economy performs over the next 12 months. The primary driver of the market's performance and the economy, by that matter, is the path of the virus. Before we can truly move on, we need to get a better handle on the virus, and we need to see a vaccine, a cure, or some form of treatment. If not, we can expect more physical distancing and other measures. The second point is the pace of the reopening. The pace of the reopening, so we've seen government officials reopening their economy. However, employers and consumers have been hesitant to return back to their normal way of life before the virus. The reasoning for this is the virus is still out there and there's still a lot of unknowns about that. So what we're offering here on the bottom right-hand side of the slide is a Harris poll where individuals are polled and they're asked a question: once the government gives the green light that it's relatively safe to go back outside, how likely are you to engage in one of these activities? And without touching on any of these activities in particular, going through them rather briefly, but consumers are hesitant. In fact, there's some case studies where in the Quad Cities between Illinois and Iowa, where Illinois had a strict lockdown, whereas Iowa was a little more passive in their lockdown, consumer activity across the borders was muted. And the reasoning for this is the virus is still around and it's alive and well. So because the market's performance is contingent on the virus and we don't know where we'll be in 12 months, we believe that around this time next year, there is a possibility that we will have a vaccine. But in the interim, within those 12 months, there's a lot of uncertainty. So we're forecasting a lot of market volatility. And in fact, for the markets, essentially run in place. And because of that, flipping over to the following page, we are actually positioning portfolios to be moderately underweight risk, just given the significant rebound in the market that we saw. I think now is a good opportunity to either increase the cash position in your portfolio or increase the liquidity in your portfolio. because we think that we are in a very volatile environment, and the primary driver of the financial markets and of the economy will be the future trajectory of the virus. And there's just so much uncertainty there. The range of outcomes are so wide that it's hard to actually pinpoint and have a hard forecast. So we think that it's prudent from a portfolio construction perspective to be relatively conservative. Our second base case is for structural monetary accommodation, for central banks across the globe to remain accommodative. So what this means is for central banks to engage in easy monetary policy or to keep interest rates low. Our risk cases are a policy bridge too short, where there is a small possibility, at least within the US, that fiscal policy is not enough or it is slow to react, just given that we have seen a significant rebound in economic activity as the country has reopened. And then secondly, we are conservative, so this is an upside risk case, which is that the markets have it right. We've seen a 38% return in the market, and we're actually really close to going back to the market all-time high. I think that we're within 5 percentage points there. But our case is, or our point of view is that investors are overly optimistic about the recovery. They're not pricing in a second wave, for example. I would argue that right now we're still in the first wave. We haven't gone back to the baseline figures. So there's a lot of risk there. However, there is a possibility that the market continues to rebound and rally. So that's one of our risk cases. And something not listed on this slide here is we also have the presidential election come November, and we also have the trade tensions between the US and China. Out of those three risk cases, the virus, presidential election, and the trade tensions, we believe that it's just a very volatile environment over the next 12 months, and just the significant rally that we've seen right now is an opportunistical time to raise cash in your portfolios, to de-risk, and to focus on safer investments. So that's a brief market outlook. We don't expect to be back to the 2019 year-end levels in terms of economic growth till 2021, the beginning of 2022. It's going to be a very elongated recovery. And a lot of this is informed by the physical distancing practices and wearing masks and all of that. So with that, I'll send it back to Dan, and I'm looking forward to the Q&A.
Thank you, Luis. You know, it's nice to see that the recovery of 38% since the downturn. And, you know, talking about volatility going forward, I mentioned earlier, you know, there's an upfront fee required to move to the Admiral, and that's an entrance fee. And that entrance fee can be 90% refunded upon termination of the contract. So for people thinking about volatility and will their assets be safe, one way to do that is, you know, by investing or paying an entrance fee for a life plan community. That 90% stays 90% a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. It doesn't go up, but it also doesn't go down. So you're managing both the up and downside risk with that. That 90% will always be secure. So thank you for all that information. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Finally, I'll turn it over to Steve. Steve is with us today from Ziegler. He's the managing director there. Ziegler is an investment banking firm and is really the leader in senior living finances, especially in the nonprofit world of senior living. Steve has managed over, I think it's 80, Steve, public debt offerings at this point worth $4 billion. And I would just say that, you know, I know Steve very well. Steve was instrumental in both our 2010 and 2017 financings here at the Admiral at the Lake. So Steve, thank you for joining us, and I will turn it over to you.
Thanks, Dan. I'm still seeing Dan on my screen, so I'm not seeing myself. So I'm gonna, Dan, you got the slide control here, right?
Yes.
Okay. I switched from my ThinkPad to my iPad, and we have all kinds of security, and I'm flying blind here, so bear with me a little bit. So I'll tell you a little bit about ourselves, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about the Admiral and why we have so much confidence in them in the context of all we've done. And this slide kind of tells the story. You know, I've been at Ziegler 20 years. Went to Kellogg and went to Wheaton College as an undergrad. Been around senior living my whole life. My first jobs were mowing lawns and washing dishes in a senior community in Boca Raton, Florida. And I was raised by my grandparents. So this stuff is very personal to me from a family perspective, and then from a professional's perspective, the Admiral is near and dear to my heart because during the crisis of 2008 and 9, after they had torn down their old building, a few of us sat there staring at the walls trying to figure out how, after 150 years, we continue to perpetuate what the old people's home of the city of Chicago. And a lot of us rolled up our sleeves and got this done. So it's always a joy to be with you guys. The slide in front of you just kind of points out this is all we do. We're a classic boutique investment banking firm. This is our little neck of the woods, and we kind of know everybody, and both the buyers of the debt we issue, but very much the stewards of the businesses like Dan Churchill. And so the Admiral's one of our blue chip clients, and we're very proud to be part of the Admiral family. Keep going, Dan. Just an example of a bunch of the OSs from the last year. So we do a lot of this is the point of the story. So as I segue into the stuff we're going to talk about, just view it from the platform of this is the space we work in, and we know about as much about it as anybody. So I had the fun of every once in a while I present for the Admiral. I go back and I have a file of stuff that goes back like almost 20 years. And here's some slides that we've used in the past. And I love this story because it's the 1858, first known as the Home for Aged and Indigent Females. And Dan, the legend is that I think this legend has been disproved, but it's a great legend anyway, so we can perpetuate 150 years later. Was that Marshall Field was the first chairman of the board. I like that legend. I don't know if it's true, but it cultivates the spirit of the Admiral, which is for 150 years, a lot of movers and shakers in the city of Chicago have been part of this charity, and changed their name to the Old People's Home, the city of Chicago. They were on the south side. When the south side was a big deal, they moved to the north side, bought the site at Foster and Lakeshore Drive, bought the old Admiral Hotel, and it looked like that when I first got to know the Admiral 20 years ago. But it was time to redevelop that asset, and keep going, Dan. And they moved to we were planning this project, and that was the photo on the right was a vision of a lot of people. They'd torn down the prior building in 2008, Merlin in 2009, had this idea for a state-of-the-art community, Lifecare, mixed use, environmentally sensitive design. We take that for granted today, but that was 15 years ago. So I say that to say this: the past is prologue with the Admiral. So for 150 years, they've been evolving and reimagining their future. Now we're, who'd have thunk we're 10 years, the building on the right's 10 years old already. And residents are being well served, and we got it done, financing done in 2010 after the crisis. A lot of us rolled up our sleeves and helped to get it done. How did we do that? Well, we did that because for years and years and years, there'd been a frothy market for debt for organizations like the Admiral, good stewards of their resources, responsible folks that on boards that made serious decisions and took their fiduciary responsibilities both for their organization and for the residents they serve very seriously. So as we got they got the building built, people moved in, the industry of senior living has been evolving as well. So 25 years ago, as the senior housing business was an infant industry, as often is true in infant industries. There's a lot of entrepreneurialism. There's a lot of new folks in the business that saw a demographic and wanted to chase it. And what we've experienced the last 25 years, in particular the last 5 years and 10 since the Admiral got their new building built, is increasing complexity. And the things that we see on the right, and then COVID only adds on top of that. So increasing complexities, healthcare and leadership turnover, technology demands, reinvestment requirements. So as you start to look at senior housing and look for a place where you want to put your assets, and I wanted to chime in when Luis was talking. I did something I've never done in my life, is after everything hit the fan in late February, I looked at my 401k and I bailed, and I plopped a big punch of it in cash. I said, if this is all I ever got, I'm fine. I'm running for the hills. Violated all the rules, and as I watched it go down through the month of March, I was glad. But the reason is you get to the point later in life where you're less amenable to risk. You kind of take your chips off the table. I think of the Admiral in that context, and taking your chips off the table as you see all that risk on the right, moving into a place that has 150 years behind them, has the reputation behind them, has a reputation for reinventing themselves through all sorts of thick and thin. They've done that. So the trend in this business has been to find stronger partners. So just like in the hospital business, in last week, I think some of you saw Northwest Community Hospital joined North Shore Health System. Increasingly, longtime single sites like the Admiral have joined forces for scale and all the other reasons you might imagine, with stronger partners, like-minded partners. And in the not-for-profit space, it's not classic M&A. It's not just an economic analysis. It's a cultural analysis. So as we were all rolling up our sleeves with the Admiral in 2008 and 2009, trying to find the right partner, looking for the right marriage for them was important to the Admiral, and we were facilitating it. And this was the trend line going on behind the scenes. It was just in the nascent stages. So there again, you see on the chart on the right, the partnerships emerging in not-for-profit senior living, as we all take for granted in the hospital business today, whether it be Northwestern Health or Advocate or others. We all can remember the hospital that originally preceded that system, or is now part of that system. There you see the trend line. Well, the Admiral was on the front end of that as well. So they reached out and they found a Quaker partner, ironically, who believes in consensus. And some of us were at that very first meeting. The Kendal is well known for doing life plan communities with Ivy League. At that time, they were well known for the Ivy League campuses at Ithaca, and one in Tarrytown, New York, Kendal on the Hudson. Now they're doing one in San Francisco with the Zen Group in California, and they announced the project, and they had Dan, I think the legend is, again, but I think a lot of this one's true, 400 or 500 deposits in the first couple of weeks they announced the project, as you might imagine, in Sonoma County. So the point is, 150 years of the Admiral, and then add that to the Kendal, you get two organizations that are well respected, well known, and for guys like me that finance these things, it's really important to be involved with partners like that. Life plan communities of all your choices you can end up in. On the left there, life plan communities continue to be on the not-for-profit side, the dominant player. Keep going, Dan. And as we look at COVID specifically on this, all the buzz that people want to put everything under the category of nursing homes. And so we see what happened in Seattle, looking back now, that was the canary in the coal mine, wasn't it? But it was a skilled nursing piece. So look at this actual hard data from National Investment Center. If you want to dig up research on senior housing, go to Nick. percentage of population with positive test results, 4.3% in skilled nursing, independent living, 0.2. The point is, and I think Dan could affirm this, that independent living, if it's run well, is more like I live in a high rise here downtown. I never have to go outside if I don't want to. You wouldn't have to either. Get those services brought to you. It's not like you're moving into a nursing facility. Keep going, Dan. Technology's also accelerated with all this as well. So we've all seen telehealth. You know, now if there's anything positive that came out of this whole COVID thing, it's advanced telehealth a decade in in weeks. Now you can get your doctor online, and all sorts of the technologies are emerging. And I live in a high rise. Not unlike the Admiral, is the technology is beginning to get to condos like mine. Add in what the Admiral does from a healthcare perspective, all of a sudden you're getting best of breed. And then you do it with an organization been around for 150 years, along with a well-respected system like Kendal. And all of a sudden you begin to see all these things coming together. Keep going, Dan. I hate to have you be doing my slides. I apologize for that. Lots of things going in the not-for-profit space. I would just encourage you, if you're looking at senior housing, to think in terms of the not-for-profits and these run by boards that have fiduciary responsibility to you, aren't moving at the whims of profit, but have long-term perspective, and then have bondholders behind them, 30-year investors with mutual funds on the line and portfolio managers that are looking over Dan's shoulder every day, looking over my shoulder every day, but understand the business and understand the fiduciary responsibility of organizations like the Admiral to you. And so they're reinvesting in campus. We're looking at affiliations when things don't go well. The plan A, B, C, and D is always on the table, as Dan knows I'm famous for saying. Keep going, Dan. And the other interesting thing is here that occupancy in the not-for-profit space, folks like you have rewarded organizations like the Admiral for all the things we've been talking about today, so that the not-for-profits just flat out continue to do better from an occupancy perspective. And those of you who are here to hear the financial analysis, that 6.6% translates into real money at some point, right? So those are depositors and residents that move in, and we continue to have high occupancy. So net on all this stuff is that is high occupancy. It translates from good providers with bankers and bondholders and others, capital markets looking over their shoulder and supporting the good players, and all that. Back to my thing about taking your money off the table. I think there's something to be said for places like the Admiral and the long-term perspective of 150 years of reinventing themselves and continuing to be successful. And the not-for-profit space, I sound like a commercial, but that's exactly where all this is. Dan, I think with that, there you go. There's my
Thanks.
unit. Can I move in? I got my money.
All right.
See you guys.
Steve, thank you. I think,
Yep.
One of my takeaways from your discussion is the confidence that the people who are investing their money into senior living communities is high still and growing, even coming out of COVID. And I think, I mentioned earlier, we are 93% occupied, which really is high in and of itself. But to stay at that level during COVID has been really phenomenal. And I think that, of those 14 apartments that are not occupied, we already have 9 of those spoken for. And so what that means is there are only really 5 apartments available for someone to take at this point. And so I think that in addition to the confidence on the investor side, we're also seeing confidence with the people who are looking to move into a community like this. So I appreciate that. So why don't we move into some questions, if that's okay. I do have a few questions that have come up. One of them is, Luis, you mentioned briefly that this is an election year. And I think we're all really well aware that it's an election year. But I wonder if you both might talk about, both Luis and Steve, talk about how, maybe historically that has impacted the senior living community, if at all. And then Luis, even, how you've seen that historically play out in the market.
Okay, yeah. So I could start. So right now, what's interesting with this election is it's really a referendum at this point. It's whether you agree with the way the current president has handled COVID and whether you agree with his approach to the economy, which at the beginning of the year, he was making a really great case. But as of late, I think polls and individuals are swaying away from voting for Trump. And it's our view that if the election were today, then it would be a Democratic sweep. So this actually has a lot of implications for investments. We would argue that Biden is the front runner. So one of the biggest concerns is, and this is probably more for Steve, but it's a rise in the corporate tax rate and potentially implementing policies that are not expansionary for global growth or for the economic activity, at least within the states. So our concern is that we will see policies that will actually, at least at the outset, not benefit the economy and thereby hurt the financial markets. Steve, I don't know if you want to jump in.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I think I agree with the Biden thing. I think that the challenge going forward is going to be to create consensus. And then, I pretty much everybody in my family is a Trump supporter. And I've been flying against the wind for a long time. In the category of the silver lining, you say what you want about Biden, you probably couldn't pick a better person after everything with Bo and everything else to give the country a collective hug for a few years and heal our wounds. And I'm hoping that's what occurs here. And I trust I'm in friendly company. But and so I say that to say this. My sense is the economic assumption that Biden might be bad for things. If anybody listened to Biden yesterday, I don't know about you, but it's like he filled this void of leadership, and it was like just walking in the room with talking about clean energy and the fact that we can turn clean energy into a multi-billion-dollar business, and America can do that because that's what we do. We did that in World War II. We've done it. It's part of our DNA is to capture these new markets. And I don't know about the rest of you, but being on our heels and seeing these COVID. Yesterday there was. You got me started, Luis. Yesterday there was Norway had 11 cases yesterday. We had 57,000 something. I don't know about you, but I don't like America being on our butts. And so to hear Biden say, hey, we can get in clean energy. So this narrative that Democrats are going to be a bunch of tax and spend liberals, I think we've pivoted. Call me crazy, but I see a lot of hey, if we're down to Norway, and I'm Norwegian, don't count us out.
Yeah.
Anyway,
yeah, thank you both for that.
Yeah.
We've been talking about COVID-19 coronavirus, and one of the questions that's come up is how have we here at the Admiral been able to combat the spread? To be honest, as somebody who works here at the Admiral, I'm actually really proud of the work that our team here has done to minimize the spread of COVID-19. In fact, we had the state came in and did a survey and looked at all of the procedures that we have in place as a result of COVID to minimize the spread. And they walked out of here saying, basically, y'all are doing a great job. We have no
Yep.
recommendations for you. Keep doing what you're doing. And I think that just goes to show the expertise that we have in our leadership here at the Admiral, from our CEO to our administrator to our director of nursing. And just as an example, we are taking temperatures of all of our residents every single day, and we're monitoring them. We're asking them questions. Are you showing any symptoms at all? We are currently doing testing of all of our residents in skilled nursing every single week. We're also doing testing of all of our employees right now every single week. And there's a myriad of precautions that we have in place, including the proper use of personal protective equipment, PPE, all the things that you would want to see. I think in a community, we've been able to achieve, and we've been able to sort of minimize the spread here at the Admiral. So I've just been
Dan,
really proud.
I'm gonna chime in. Two things quick. One is I've been because I bank a lot of places like the Admiral around Chicago. I've been in touch with what's going on. In the first couple of, I was laying in bed one night, and one of our clients on the South Side, Smith Senior Living, I'm watching the Channel 9 news. The lead story breaking is Kevin McGee, and they'd had an outbreak at Smith Village, and that was like the first few weeks, and it was all coming. Everyone was reacting, and then I heard the Admiral had one in nursing. Fast forward 4 months, we've got a client now who basically, they do Medicare rehab. They're leaning in. They're buying the equipment to think about this. Organizations like you, good not-for-profits are now saying, we can excel at this. We're doing better, and we're beginning, as you know how Ziegler rolls. We're getting the data to support this. But the anecdotal evidence right now is that the not-for-profits are hitting the cover off the ball. That you guys are all the things that talk about the 150 years we just talked about is the innovation and the smarts and the keeping your eye on the ball that matters. Some organizations are leaning into caring for people with COVID in specialized units apart from the residents in independent living, but it gives you a window on how good you guys are at what you do. The other thing that relates to me, the context to me personally, basically where I live, I have everything except the healthcare piece of the Admiral, and I live by myself. So the question becomes, okay, if I get this thing, what happens? So if you'd asked me 6 months ago, I would have said, nobody's gonna frickin' take my temperature every day. Are you kidding me? It sounds like the nanny state. All of a sudden now it sounds like, oh wow. And if you bring food, I have to go down now to the loading dock to get my deliveries because they won't bring it up to the unit. I think every retirement community, Dan, is in the COVID age, until you get the dining rooms back open, are bringing food up to the units, right?
Right.
So there are, those of you who live in high rises get what I'm talking about. There's some differentiators here, and all of a sudden the Admiral starts to look like the place to go, taking your chips off the table.
Yeah, and to that point, we actually had a new resident move in right in the middle of all of this pandemic that's been going on. And the reason he moved in right in the middle of it is because he felt he would be safer here and be cared for and monitored much better than he would have been able to at home. So yeah, I completely agree, and we're actually seeing that here too.
Yep.
I know we're coming up on time, but I did have just a couple other questions that I can throw out that I can answer. One of them was, do you accept long-term care insurance? And the answer is yes, we do. So if you have a policy, that can apply here at the Admiral. There was another question about, do we have a swimming pool, exercise classes? And the answer to that is yes. Right now, we are being very responsible about social distancing and making sure that there are scheduled times for individual work to be done in those areas, again, in an effort to not spread coronavirus. And all of those are also included in the monthly fee. there was a question around the real estate market. And actually what I would say about the real estate market is that stay tuned for the Admiral of the Lake's next master class series. We will be featuring a real estate expert, and we will be able to learn a lot from them in the future. And then there was one other question around the tax deductibility of fees that are paid to the Admiral. And so to answer that question, the IRS has deemed a portion of both the entrance fee and the ongoing monthly fees that are paid to be a prepaid medical expense. And so what that means is you can deduct a portion of your fees that you pay to the Admiral as medical expenses on your tax return. So keep that in mind as you're thinking about ways in which you will pay for the entrance fee, as an example. I can work with someone in ways to minimize their tax burden by having liquidated investments that may cause a tax burden. So there are strategies that I can work with you around that if you have other questions. Well, it's 11:31 according to my clock. So I would just wanted to say thank you to both Luis and Steve for joining us today and providing their insight and expertise in the investment and senior living market. And just to wrap it up, I just wanted to let people know that we do have a savings program in place. If you wanted to take a tour here at the Admiral, you can call the number on the screen. And like I said, our next masterclass event will be held August 19th, and that will feature a real estate expert for all of our real estate questions. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.